So I'm Liora Silkes, I'm Business Development Manager, Resonant. Been at Resonant since last summer. Previously, been actually working very closely with Craig, working for the city of Newton, been on Massachusetts Energy World for a number of years. Really coming to this from the people side of things. We were just talking about the environmental justice world and the reasons for addressing climate crisis from a people and justice perspective. And to me, that looks like both thinking carefully and prioritizing projects that benefit people, especially people who have not been received benefits from large infrastructure projects before. And also thinking about how we influence each other and doing large projects at synagogues being a way of spreading this is something you can do and this is how wonderfully it works and how beneficial it is for the community there, as well as everyone then thinking that their own lives in them. Especially with solar, right? We've seen that like when one person gets solar in the neighborhood, everyone else then does it. And so I'm thinking about how we can make these things grow and spread, and when that happens through the planning side of things or the eating dinner together side of things.
And I'm Josh Kriesberg. I work with Liora at Resonant Business Development. About 10 years experience in the clean energy field writ large, working on a bunch of different things, everything from policy work specifically related to energy efficiency at the state and federal level, to more recently working in corporate sustainability and now doing solar for Resonant.
That's where did you work at those places?
So I worked at the Mass Clean Energy Center for 3 years. Before that, I was working at a nonprofit called E for the Future, which is an advocacy organization. And then I left Mass CEC, went to business school at the University of Vermont. After that, worked a couple years at Boston Consulting Group before starting at Resonant not too long ago.
Let's go back to our agenda slide.
Yeah.
What are we actually talking about? Right. The point is today really is to talk about the state of mostly on the federal side of things. Where are we now? Because there's been that's been a huge supporter of this industry, and things are changing. So we'll get into those details. And we have a small group, right? We're sitting down. So this is really a conversation supported by slides. Would love to hear things of experience that you've had as we've moved into this. But I'll just start with a little bit of a background just on Resonant, as many of you are familiar, but just to give our full spiel. We've been around Massachusetts for about 8 years at this point, working across the state, New York, actually just starting to dip our toes into Rhode Island as well, which is very fun. Focused on projects that are complicated, organizations that need extra support to figure out how are we making this all happen, whether that's just finding extra money or going through board processes to get solar on the roof, working in nonprofits, affordable housing, especially in the affordable housing world, a lot of funky who has ownership and all sorts of different lenders and working through those consent processes and waiting for low-income housing tax credits to come in. So that's mostly the world that I spend my time in. We also do nonprofit world as well. We are a turnkey provider, so everything from those initial conversations with whoever it may be and whoever needs to be making those decisions through going through all the different potential financial offerings or even types of projects. Are you putting on your roof, in your parking lot, where else it may be, through the entire installation and then beyond with our operations and maintenance agreements. So here's just a number of different projects we've done. We got ground mounts, we got parking canopies, we got flat roofs, sloped roofs, historic buildings, new construction, the whole world. Yeah. Question about that?
No. My parents got married into practice.
Well, they could have taken their photo, with these solar things.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
You temporary?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, we'll talk about tomorrow. Yeah, we'll get some examples there. But yeah, just back in the previous slide. All of these are existing buildings. But we're also doing the new construction world of, if you're extending your building or going into a new, renovation, let's look at the plans even before you start building, get the conduit in there as the building's going up. is also what they're with. We're also doing a lot of the, especially in the Jewish world, a lot of the Jewish senior housing, working with Tulane, the neighborhood housing, Jewish senior life. So,
We like a temple specialist.
yeah, Josh is doing our retrofits.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've done about a third of all of the houses of worship that have solar across the state.
Wow.
Yeah, we work with a number of different organizations. We work with JCAN, Mass IPL, who's here. They're incredible. We are the official partner of the city of Cambridge for their solar installs.
hello.
Welcome.
I work here, so I'm just checking. You're good.
Oh, yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Or yeah, working with a number of other nonprofits, faith-based organizations. The diocese has been a lot of fun to work with. Gotten into the Boston world, and our coworker just a few weeks ago gave a full proposal in Portuguese to the Boston diocese. So it's-
That slide was gonna be skipped.
Yeah, we've already talked about, we do a number of different types of projects. So I'll turn it to Josh to talk through where we're at right now.
Yeah, so state of the solar industry. There's obviously been a lot of news, a lot of stuff going on. So we'll talk about some of that. First, to kind of set the stage a little bit, I like to show this slide because I think it's a pretty good illustration visually. I'm a very visual person, but you can see here average retail price of electricity. You can see Massachusetts here in this orange brownish line, whatever that would be, and then the US average in the blue line underneath. So you can see going back almost 25 years now, Massachusetts is pretty much always consistent, is always consistently higher than the country at large. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of factors that go into that: aging infrastructure, the fuel sources that we use. But one of the biggest ones is that we're dependent on the market at large for oil, for gas, and these commodities are volatile and are a lot of times impacted by macroeconomic factors beyond the control of just the people who live in Massachusetts. And so that kind of really sets the stage for why, sort of why solar is important. Obviously, you all sort of have some idea of that already, but it's worth considering that specifically for Massachusetts, we have our own unique challenges, and this is something that as you can see at the sort of later years, it's getting worse, not better, right? And so that's sort of the gloomy side of things. The uplifting side of things is that on the other side of the coin, Massachusetts has very strong incentives for solar, specifically with the SMART program, the Solar Massachusetts, Solar Massachusetts Revenue Tariff, I think is what that stands for. But the sort of upshot is that this program provides cash incentives to businesses and individuals that go solar, paid out on a monthly basis. So for a residential customer, that can be just nice money to have, but for a commercial project, specifically like the new construction ones Liora is talking about, or even retrofit ones, having that bankable income stream, that bankable revenue coming in, can really help from a financing perspective for a financer to understand, okay, like I'm investing this money. Yes, they have debt service, they have interest that they have to pay, but there is going to be some revenue coming in that will help pay for that as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just not as familiar with Massachusetts stuff, so is it okay to ask?
Yeah, of course.
So is this like a feed-in tariff, or like when you say they're getting money payment, is it that they're just the system, all the energy is being priced and paid for back by the utility
Yes.
and the smart
Yeah,
program?
the way the SMART program works is that you forfeit the RECs of your system to the utility, and they pay out a set rate.
Just on the rec stuff.
It's not, you get way higher than the market rate rec cost,
Yeah.
but it's that the utility, or the state overall is, has to meet certain renewable energy targets, right? We
Right.
want to be encouraging the development of
Sure.
solar across the state, and so the utility is paying you out on a per kilowatt hour basis, for between 10 and 20 years, depending on the size of the project,
Yeah.
just for producing renewable energy. And in return, this sort of backside of it,
Yeah.
if you really want to get into
I
details,
do.
is that you are giving them your
Right.
recs and they get count that as renewable.
And I guess. So it sort of in my head, I kind of compare contrast, because I just went through this last year, putting solar down houses in Rhode Island. There were two programs. There was a program that was like a feed-in tariff where they basically just bought the utility at a fixed rate, would buy all the energy you produced.
Mhm.
And then you would get like kind of extra bill and cash back, but that was fixed, right? So this went further out in years, it was sort of less of a good deal and less of a good deal. But you also had a program where they just gave you a cash grant upfront. If you met certain things, like they gave me $5,000 just based on the efficiency of the system. This sounds like it's neither of those. It sounds like it's just overpaying for the RECs as an incentive for people to go solar.
Yeah, so there's the net metering side
Yeah.
of, you're not paying for electricity.
I'm still net metering, and
Yeah.
this, you could still net
So net
metering.
metering is a totally separate thing, right? You're saving on your electricity bill, this from producing yourself. And also you now have an additional income stream. This is more like the REF program, right? Or it's not at all like it because, right, REFs is just here's a
Right.
one-time
You're right.
cash, branch essentially
Right.
once you turn it on. This is still like over time based on kilowatt hours produced, but it's just the state saying we want the incentivizing.
And what does that look like for like typical homeowner? What is that monthly payment that they're getting?
Yeah, for on the homeowner side of things, the set rate, they're actually redoing the program right now. So it used to be super complicated, it'll be way better moving forward. I wanna say the base rate is 3 cents and then it goes up another 3 based on affordable housing, but
I'm not 100% sure right now, like, I know, like, they're reworking
Yeah,
that whole program, cause right now, I don't think it's like consistent across the board for like where you live and like certain areas.
there's a
like,
lot
they
of-
tap out of it really fast and
Yeah.
like.
Well, so they're getting rid of that like different
Yeah.
areas thing, they're
Yeah.
gonna set it, the new program set across the board. The biggest difference is that under 25 kilowatts AC, like on the homeowner side of things, is fairly low and you get it for 10 years. Over 25 kilowatts AC, especially if you get certain adders, which maybe we have on the next slide about like, if you have a parking canopy, if you have affordable housing, it can be the low income community solar, you can be getting up to like 17 cents per kilowatt hour.
That's
And so a lot of the projects that I'm looking at now are over 25 years, getting more in cash, basically guaranteed from the utility than the upfront cost of the system. So it's been, this new program is really exciting and will be rolling
And
out.
it's designed way more, it really works better at a commercial level. At the resi.
Yeah.
Cause you're at that 3 cents, like what would that be if you said your average, whatever, like an average Massachusetts homeowner had like $100 bill, they're getting what? You're like,
It's not.
I mean,
I remember off the top of your head, you've been modeling these.
no,
ones.
it's small.
I mean, over
Like $300 a year, like if it's 3 cents,
Yeah.
I'm just doing 10,000
Yeah.
kilowatt hours
Yeah.
a year roughly, you know.
right,
like,
yeah, over
so-
10 years.
Well,
yeah.
and that would just be for 1 year, but yeah.
So you're looking at something like, it's not nothing though, it's like $25 a month or something.
There's definitely for a homeowner, there's definitely sort of a tangible benefit for businesses where, the scale is much larger.
Yeah.
We're seeing projects where just in smart incentive alone, you're getting, $1,000 to $2,000 per month. For 25 years, just for going solar, in addition to energy savings, in addition to federal tax credits.
Yeah.
In addition to all of that, those other things. And to Leora's point, the new system, the Smart 3 tariff that they're rolling out, hopefully at the beginning of 2026, they've been dragging their feet a little bit on getting it finalized, but
It's supposed to happen now, right?
Yeah.
it was supposed to be now, but now but assuming it's the beginning of 2026, pretty much essentially the sort of main things to keep in mind, they're smoothing out the benefits. Essentially what had happened under the prior programs is out in the western part of the state where you can build these huge ground mounts. Those had essentially used up all of the incentive because it's a set amount in each program that declines over time.
Yeah.
So these developers rushed in, built these huge ground mounts that ate up all the incentive, which took away a lot of it from homeowners, from, sort of the slower movers, which, per the conversation earlier, very much the people that have been left out of the transition overall. And so this new program is aiming to fix a lot of those things. And typically what we see with these programs is in the early days of the incentive, they kind of overshoot and the people rush and there's kind of a gold rush. And then over time, they kind of roll back the incentives a little bit. And so what we're really advising folks is, yes, the federal stuff, there's some uncertainty right now, but at the state level, there's a lot of really exciting stuff going on. And if you can get yourself ready to go so that on the first, month that the program opens, you're ready to submit, that's going to really help make sure you're getting these strong, 10, 11, 12 cent per hour compensation rates locked in for anywhere from 10 to 20 years.
So the way that they set it up is right, it's not declining based on overall bill, and the amount that you're gonna get per kilowatt hour is being written in, but they've reserved the right to change the capacity allotted for each type of program, so like the residential, the affordable housing, right, that they may be redoing each year, so we'll see how much capacity fills up in the first year, and then.
No, what happens. Great, thank you. That's-
So when that happens, it will, the amount that you would be eligible for wouldn't depend on whether you're on municipal light plants or if you would Eversource or would it change?
Smart is still paid out by the utility, so it's still, that is true, right, if you gotta be Eversource, National Grid, Unitil.
Oh.
The munis are a totally different story,
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
only
it-
IOUs.
yes.
Yeah, and that is how the system is set up. But it is worth noting that in a lot of the municipal light districts, because you're paying less for you are paying less for the electricity, but it is, yeah, this is only available in the in those 3 areas.
Yeah, we're in Wellesley,
Alright.
different story.
That's
here.
it's a
Yeah.
it's like a PUC program.
It's.
called like a-
TPS. It's paid out, written, getting the smart incentive is, the application directly with your utility and then the check.
Yeah, it comes from the utility.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a state program.
No, I just mean like, there was a lot of programs, like they get made at the state utility commission level and only the IOUs then have to do them, and so the
Yeah.
munis don't do them, so
That's,
always-
yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, we're waiting for the DPU right now to
Right.
give the final regs, to like, update them.
Yeah, this we were kind of just talking about, but costs are going up. Solar is a great way to combat that, allowing you to, whether you're doing direct purchase or a financing arrangement, really lock in lower utility rates that, as we're seeing, are increasing faster and faster.
When you showed the graph of the utility rates, why is Mass kind of pulling away in prices from the, the overall averages across the country?
Yeah,
I think it kind of like stay, maybe in line or something. It
Yeah.
should be pulling away to the upside, which.
I mean, it's like a-
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. Part of it is sort of increased demand. That's a part of it. Part of it is the reliance on specifically natural gas, which is extremely volatile. And as you can see with the war in Ukraine has definitely caused a spike around gas prices, at least in the short term. So I think those are probably, like, at least in the very recent past, those are probably the 2 biggest factors, but yeah, did you have?
No, I totally agree with you. It's basically, I think mostly comes down to natural gas. And it's not just that the war has like a disruption in supply lines, but then strategically, all these countries are pivoting to importing LNG from the United States instead of buying. And so then the difference in the lines it's actually an exponential difference going up because of how much New England is dependent generally on imported natural gas. So that even if even if it goes up everywhere by 25%, it's because we're like at what, like 50 or 60, it's like a big number.
I think it's like 50, you're talking the percentage of the
percent
grid.
of
It's like
natural gas.
it's like 58%.
Yeah, so that just hits us way harder, so
Right.
it's more exponential on the graph than it would.
Not to mention sort of global supply chain. We're not necessarily geographically close to a lot of the energy that's being produced. So there are sort of those costs get baked in, as even if we're sourcing power from Canada or from, other parts of the country, there's sort of the supply chain costs that are baked into that as well.
Well,
Cost
is
of
there a
fuel.
chance that our offshore wind projects might help us a little bit here?
It would definitely help.
Yeah.
Assuming it gets built and all of that, it would definitely help. Yes.
What about like grid infrastructure itself too? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
just-
energy efficiency and like consuming less electricity and less energy,
Storage.
definitely can make a difference. Again, to the conversation from the plenary session, there's also, we have very old housing stock,
Yes,
sort of
yeah.
overall, meaning that it takes more and so it takes more, it's hard, and it's harder to implement those measures sort of writ large, but
There's kind of the side part of this, that's specifically about sort of the larger.
Yeah.
The larger, there's a great article just 2 days ago in Canary Media about with the grid infrastructure, about, okay, we need more like large scale solar online, we need more, we need like how to pay for that, how to pay for the upgrades to the grid to then connect that into the grid. And Massachusetts have worked out some interesting ways of splitting the costs with the developer and the grid reliability piece. So so we know I'll forward you the Canary Media article.
Yeah.
Very cool. We're doing interesting things in the state.
I'm offshore wind is, I mean, the big thing is like every time, is the bidding into the wholesale market. It with offshore wind just starts the pricing much lower.
Right.
Once it's in there, but it feels like, I don't know about you else, but like my home heating bill, because we're on natural gas, so now was insane. Like it was $500 a month, which is crazy. So the degree that electricity, at least I think it's easier to substitute, out of natural gas. I think the home heating is kind of like a harder.
Yeah.
Harder go.
Yeah, because get the electricity, the price of gas is rising at an even faster rate than the price.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the Massachusetts state overview. We're looking pretty decent. Federally, I think to sort of set the stage for this conversation, where we stand right now, the House has passed their version of the budget bill. The Senate is currently debating it. From there, they'll have to reconcile the two bills before sending it to the president's desk. So all that we know right now is what we've seen in the House bill, and then what we kind of hear from, we have, tax experts and sort of legal experts that have their ear to the ground in DC that we talk with every now and then. But right now we're just going based off of what was in the House bill, which unfortunately has very much been kind of the worst case scenario. Which is the full removal, effective immediately, of the Inflation Reduction Era tax credit, which currently the base tax credit is 30% for any solar project, residential or commercial. There are additional adders that can get the total value of that credit up to 70% of the total cost of a system. As the House bill is written, those would be sunset immediately. The sort of initial version of the bill had proposed a more sort of phased out approach of it stepping down from 30, I think it was like to 22% over the next 10 years, and then down to 15% and kind of phasing it out by 2028. But that ended up on the cutting room floor as they seek to find ways to pay for all of the tax cuts for the rich that they want to implement. Sorry, not too much commentary here, trying to keep it objective, but that's what happened. And so the important thing to keep in mind with the current version of the bill is that there is a way to what's called safe harbor the fiscal year 2025 tax law. And the way that they wrote it into the bill is that in order to do that, a project would need to, within 60 days of the bill signing, be able to demonstrate that they'd made substantial progress on the project and that it had substantially begun. And typically, the threshold for that is 5% of the total project cost has been paid out. As far as what qualifies as that 5%, that historically, what it's been has been ordering physical materials. So inverters, racking, modules, anything like that. What's unclear in the current version, what we're hearing from our tax lawyers, is that we might be able to use soft costs, so things like engineering design, structural review. That would be great if that's the reality, because then, not that those numbers are generated and, you can kind of say, you can take costs from one area and shift it into that to make it be the number that you want. So
You don't have to store.
you don't have to buy a warehouse or put them in your driveway or your garage.
At somebody's house, and you're like, I'm gonna be back.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 years, right? So there's sort of all sorts of benefits to if we can use soft costs for safe harbor. It's unclear at this time if that will be allowed. The sort of the safest way to do it would be to purchase 5% of materials. Typically, inverters and racking are going to be the first things that you buy, as they're sort of the smallest, the easiest to store, and more or less you can use them for a different project if that project doesn't end up working, right? There's so that's sort of, and then sorry, the last piece of that, in addition to safe harboring within 60 days, the project would need to be complete by the end of 2028. So you do have a little bit of a timeline. So that's sort of what's in the House bill as far as the solar tax credits. It's unfortunate that it kind of got chopped at the 11th hour. We've already seen multiple members of the House come out and say that they regret voting for the bill. There's obviously a ton of consternation going on right now within the Senate and within sort of public figures around what the version of the bill will look like. So what we don't know is what's going to be in the Senate bill, how they're going to reconcile the two. That remains to be seen. What we do know is that they're targeting July 4th for the signature of the bill. So that 60-day safe harbor, that would take you to the beginning of September is when you have to lock those in. So yeah, that's what we know right now. Anything to add?
Yeah, I guess, sure thing, another way to safe harbor and more applicable on the new construction side, but may have relevance in things that you have in your mind is, meaningful construction start. And so we're working with some of our new construction projects. If they've put in the conduit for the solar, if the GC puts that in, even if we're not, they're not gonna complete the roof, we're not gonna actually put the solar on for another year or so. But if they put in the conduit that's specifically for solar, that's construction start on solar. And so there's, some other ways to get around having to purchase and store a whole bunch of panels.
Yeah.
So it would be second. And of course, number one thing being call your senator, ask your friends who live in North Carolina and Alaska,
Utah.
call their senators.
Yeah.
We have a handful.
If you know anyone in North Carolina, Alaska, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, even sort of.
There are a
Texas.
handful of,
Texas for
yeah,
sure.
there are a handful of Republican senators who have already spoken out specifically about the solar tax credit, and so.
Find it ironic too, right? Because like we have tariffs to bring manufacturing back to the US and there's a lot of solar manufacturing being done in the US.
Yeah.
That was kind of like
that was spurred on by
you're gonna basically
it's almost like they don't care about the certain talking points that they have and have a different agenda.
Really?
One could almost be convinced.
I feel like solar is just such a perfect example of everything they're trying to do.
You would
It's like,
think.
it's creating jobs, it's good for the environment,
It's local,
energy
but it's-
independence from getting, there's so many things about it that
You
are
would-
like a net positive.
You would really.
You talked about tariffs.
Sorry, yeah.
And you said it's manufactured in the US. Do we have panels built in the US now, or where are most of them coming from now?
Most of them.
So-
from Asia,
Yeah.
not necessarily China, that's.
Yeah, that's the next slide here.
Yeah.
So tariffs is the next piece of it. Obviously there's been sort of a lot of back and forth and there are tariffs, there aren't tariffs, the tariff is this much, it's that much. What we're seeing and what we're projecting for is on the one hand, yes, there has been a lot of solar manufacturing that's sort of in progress. Factories that are being built that are not necessarily functioning at maximum capacity right now. So some of those are still coming online. In the meantime, most of the materials that we're sourcing are from places like Vietnam, South Korea, and sort of the Southeast Asia part of the world. And so, with tariffs, a little bit of it will kind of depend on the specific country, on sort of, where things ultimately land when it's time to buy your materials, which again, with the safe harbor rules might be sooner. Again, it depends on if we can include soft costs. If you're not building your project for a year or two, it could look completely different in a year or two. So overall with tariffs, the other piece to consider is that when you're building a solar array and when you're doing sort of when you look at the overall project costs, there's a lot of costs beyond just purchasing the modules and the inverters, which are the main pieces that are not built in the US. Any sort of racking or like a canopy structure, or if you're doing a ground mount, sort of all of that, the steel, all of that can be bought in America. And so there is sort of a good amount of the sort of hardware can still be purchased in America. And there is a large amount of the project costs, everything from your engineering to your structural to your sort of construction management, all of those costs are not affected by tariffs, right? So typically what we're seeing is overall project costs, anywhere from like, I'd say, we have here 2 to 3.5%. It's going to, of course, depend on the size of the project, how many modules, all of that. But overall with tariffs, we're not nearly as concerned with tariffs as we are with the federal tax credit. I think it is important to note, given sort of level of concern and all of that, that there was a solar industry before the IRA. there will be a solar industry after, no matter what happens. There is enough demand there. These projects are still profitable in many cases. There are a lot of sort of regulatory requirements in Massachusetts and in other states that require solar or reaching net zero. And so if you have to do it, as long as, yeah, it would be great to make 11%, but if you're making 6%, you're still happy. You still had to do it, right? And I think that is, if I'm being sort of the other side of the coin, is that some of the argument against tax credits is for these projects that were going to happen already. Now they're getting the tax credit, which is great for them, but is that the baby the best use? That's sort of the argument on the other side of it. I disagree because I think we should be incentivizing it, but I can kind of understand where if this project's happening already, do we necessarily need to be subsidizing it even further? Is sort of, I think, the other side of the coin. That's worth mentioning, but I disagree with personally.
And I think, there's responsiveness to all these policies, right? I mean, the reason why it's all lit by, and I totally know that the panels are being assembled in these countries,
Mhm.
right? But the wafers and all these things are still made in Xinjiang and elsewhere,
Sure.
to be real about it. And
Sure.
but that's because there was a trade case, right? That happened, I forget exactly how many years ago, to say that we're an American solar manufacturer. So they ruled, with China, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna go to these third countries. I just think stuff like that will continue to happen. Where it will
Right. There'll be a
sort of
reaction to
move-
this policy
Yeah,
that will
this
shift
policy.
things.
And Trump will sign some trade deal with some specific country, and then everything will
Flow through there.
flow through there in order to dodge
Right,
it.
right. The current setup was meant to game the policy as it were previously. There will be a new policy that will be gamed in a new way that will take a couple of months to figure out probably.
And also be like, wow, it's incredible. Like Indonesia is where all these panels are.
Right. And and so there is a little bit of that from I think that's sort of why tariff policy has not really been part of our economic world for a while, is because in today's globalized era, there's so many ways to circumvent a tariff on any one country that yeah. So anyway, I think the sort of takeaways here, we're less concerned about tariffs. Yes, there will be some level of project cost increase because due to tariffs, but overall, given the sort of cost structure of a solar project, it's not going to be nearly as significant as you might see in the news 100% tariff. That does not mean 100% project cost increase. Even that might mean only 3 to 4% project cost increase overall. Okay, we already talked about smart a little bit. This was the slide we were talking about before that has the extra adders that I didn't find, but here it is now. So rebalanced, we talked about this, Central and Western Mass. This time around, they're going to have more opportunity to have access to the incentive to not have it eaten up by large ground mounted developers. Parking canopies have a big new adder, so it's going to make exploring canopies more viable in a lot of places that they might not have been. There's also a new adder for this rooftop raised racking, which is essentially a situation where you can imagine a flat roof that has HVAC equipment or sort of other types of mechanical stuff on the roof. Essentially, a mini canopy over that where you're post and rail, putting 4 or 5, 6 feet above the stuff, so that you can then build that essentially build a canopy over whatever equipment you have. There's a new adder for that, and then also affordable housing, and then projects with a substantial community benefit also have access to additional adders within the SMART program as well.
Another time, I do want to go past, but one quick thing, right? These in the world of synagogues and nonprofits, probably the most relevant pieces being parking canopies. So we've done a handful, but right, very exciting to hopefully do a lot more. And community benefits, as we'll get to an example of sharing, especially if you're doing an enormous parking canopy, sharing the credits from that canopy with low-income community members then gives you a huge bonus for SMART. So those in the synagogue or nonprofit world probably are community-based bonus.
Yep. Yeah, just to wrap it all up, a lot of moving parts, things are changing. We'll see what happens with the Senate bill, but regardless of what happens, the solar industry is here to stay and it will continue to move forward. It will be different and we'll have to figure stuff out, but that's what we do. So we will. But if you are thinking about solar, and maybe less relevant for the three of you in this room, but for people you talk to, now is the time to get started. We always hate in our conversations to really put time pressure on people because it's a big decision, it's an expensive decision. But the reality of the situation is, if you're thinking about doing it, the federal gravy train might be ending. And so it's important to make the decision. And you know, if you end up changing your mind later, so be it, but very often you won't want to. And yeah, if you know people in with Republican senators, tell them to call, tell them to email, everything counts. Okay, yeah.
Comfortable statement so many times that they're like, I hate to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna need a decision quickly, probably.
Yeah,
Like, something like that, you know?
We don't want to be the high pressure
It's not
salespeople,
my
but
side.
like,
It's.
but this is for your own good.
But this is honestly, like, it might be, like, the
Right.
last shot.
It might be.
We've
Okay,
also done, the Safer Harbor world, was the world that we have been
Right.
doing
it's worth mentioning.
IRA, because every year, the solar tax credit was stepping down, and so it was a safe harbor, right, you want 26%, not
Yeah.
22%, okay, now we have to do this. And so we Resident was doing that for a number of years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
This whole thing's designed to help you guys sell, create.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. It's a right, it's a sales thing.
The larger world,
Yeah.
not doing anything. Ideally not really under 25, maybe
Yeah.
a few under
Right.
15, so.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'd love to be doing mostly 60 to 100, so.
Yeah.
For sure.
Keep an eye on the clock. I want to give
How
Liora.
big do you go?
Oh, sorry.
We do it all, like we do commercial project, I mean, what I do, like, I'm newish to the industry, like, I primarily just do residential, so that's
Okay.
really my bread and butter. But we talk about all this stuff in our meetings and everything, and we do have some commercial projects, but generally speaking, we probably do mostly residential, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give you a minute to talk about the case studies.
Yeah, just to briefly show what this looks like. I think everyone here actually feels very comfortable with everything on the slide. So we have a number of ways of financing these systems, but just to give some examples of what this has looked like for projects we've already done and the Boundary State. We recently, so Temple Rain and Newton put solar in 2018. So a while ago, incentives were very different. This was a hybrid ownership model because at the time nonprofits could not get any sort of tax credit. With the IRA, they can. You can see where that goes in the future. But even with this hybrid ownership, they were initially, projected to be saving somewhere around $600,000 in 25 years. Electricity prices have gone up drastically. We saw the war in Ukraine and everything else that has happened. And so now our updated models through 2043 increase the amount that they'll be saving by $172,000. So, no matter what ends up happening in the incentive world, this just producing your own electricity, using that directly in the building is a huge benefit, especially for larger buildings using the stuff.
And I think, sorry, just the one other thing to highlight is that like business as usual, not doing anything, like you're not actually not doing anything. You're signing up to pay those utility rates going forward. And solar is the best way at sort of whether it's residential or small commercial or large commercial level to protect yourself from them.
And then this is what I had alluded to just a moment ago. We have some examples of these different counties. Very exciting. So Temple and Luna did a PPA and is sharing, so they have a lower electricity rate for the electricity that they're getting from this canopy, and then they're also baked into that PPA rate, the financer is also benefiting from increased incentives for sharing the electricity with low-income neighbors. The Discovery Museum bought the system outright and is also sharing their savings and getting benefits from doing so. You can see the difference here, right? Both of these are great numbers. Awesome to save $173,000. And also, if you make the upfront investment, your savings are great. Yeah. So, summary of everything we talked about. Number one, call your senator. Number two, I think especially for you, being the sort of like industry folks, we want to be talking about this all the time, everywhere we go. And we're here to chat with you in more detail about this week. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.